SPACs, SPACs, that's Special Purpose Acquisition Companies. These are the new gleam in first generation entrepreneurs' eyes. SPACs they're also very colorfully called blank check companies because they are just literally just a pool of cash that's sort of listed on say the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange, because these SPACs have no business, they have no operations, no employees, no nothing, just a pool of cash. Their job is to prowl around to acquire valuable assets via a stock swap. So, when they come across a fast-growing newbie, a fast-growing new company, say in e-commerce or SaaS or renewable energy in some hot economies, let's say America or Israel or India, they sort of pounce on it by issuing new stock to existing shareholders, and then they disappear with the acquired asset that gets listed. Now, today's SPACs are the sexy thing on Wall Street. In the first 2 months of 2021, 90 billion of SPACs have been raised compared to 83 billion all through 2020. Now, this has ignited the gleam for India's startup unicorns. Remember, nearly 135 billion with a B, billion of cash is lying in trust, waiting, as I said, to pounce. But India's regulatory trapdoors could imprison, could kill so many young dreams. The core problem is that India's regulations fail to evolve with very swift innovations that are taking place in the architecture of global finance. Now, on top of failing to evolve, our regulators, frankly, I wouldn't even call them regulators, they are more inspectors. They apply these outdated laws with brute force. They freeze bank accounts, they arrest hapless professionals, they impound assets. So, and this is my fear, how could India's what I call regulatory inspectorate, how could they sort of crash and burn this wonderful SPAC opportunity? Let me simplify the most egregious impediments. Number one, under liberalized remittance scheme, that's LRS, resident Indians are allowed a maximum investment of $250,000 per annum in foreign assets. Now, if this rule is applied to a first generation founder, then her cross-border share swap will just become impossible. I'll give you an example. If she owns 10% of a company valued at $1 billion, a unicorn, she is entitled to shares worth $100 million. Now, with LRS, liberalized remittance scheme, she can only get 250,000. That's 0.25% of the wealth she has worked so hard to create. Just 0.25%. That's cruel. Number two, if you overcome the LRS problem, as I expect you should, you will run into a capital gains tax obstacle. Since it will be a cross-border event, the share swap will be treated as a sale and then a fresh purchase contract. It won't be a tax-neutral merger as is in a domestic, if it happens domestically. Now, therefore, if it's treated as a sale and fresh purchase contract, our poor founder, she will have to cough up almost $20 million in capital gains taxes. Third and finally, the so-called criminal action of round tripping. Now, since our founder would have sold a local asset to purchase a foreign share which is invested back in an Indian business, she could be guilty of round tripping and frankly could even go to jail. That's sometimes how brutishly some of these mechanistically some of these laws get applied. Do you think I'm being too pessimistic? Why, for instance, can't I cut some slack for Prime Minister Modi's unalloyed commitment to, Startup India, Stand Up India, Digital India, Atmanirbhar, that's self-reliant India? I'm pessimistic because I have seen this horror movie before, where a good faith prime ministerial invocation is just killed by didactic bureaucrats. Now, a few years back, I had described the policy pitfalls that had condemned our first generation entrepreneurs to dacoity, D-A-C-O-I-T-Y. You can see that video here. I called it Digital America and China were obliterating Indian tech. Just as Chambal dacoits looted central India in the bad old days of 1970s, 80s, Shenzhen and Silicon Valley dacoits, D-A-C-O-I-T, are savaging our digital landscape in the 21st century. Now, in response to that scathing criticism, several IAS officers had reached out and they said, we will change. They promised change. In fact, our bureaucrats were very happy. Well, they were chuffed when finally, and I believe this was done in response to the charge of dacoity, superior rights, SR shares were permitted under Indian law. The government believed it had put India's first-gen founders on an even keel with their American and Chinese peers. Unfortunately, and that's where the but comes in, unfortunately, these sort of grand-sounding incentives, well, they were grudging, they were half-hearted, and frankly, they were just too tiny to make a substantial difference on the ground. Let me tell you. You can get about 10x voting on your equity, but a bunch of government secretaries will have to certify that you are a genuinely tech-savvy outfit. I mean, secretaries certifying that. If your estranged wife or brother is wealthy, well, you could be barred, since your net worth, just because they are wealthy, but your net worth gets counted along with theirs, or theirs gets counted along with yours, could become more than 500 crores, and therefore you are barred. You can only keep your SR shares while working full-time. What's that? Working full-time in the company. If you quit, they automatically convert to ordinary shares with 1x voting rights. 5 years after listing, your SR shares shall compulsorily become ordinary shares. You can't sell SR shares. The minute you transfer them, they become ordinary shares. Unfortunately, when you die, your family cannot inherit those SR shares. I mean, that's really how our Babus, our didactic bureaucrats killed superior rights SR shares. Now, I plead, don't let them snuff the SPAC GLEAM. और अगर यही विचार जो मैंने अभी आपके सामने रखे अंग्रेजी में आप हिंदी में सुनना चाहते हैं, तो आप हमारी हिंदी क्विंट की YouTube चैनल पे जाइए और यही वीडियो आपको हिंदी में भी मिलेगा. एंड ऑफ कोर्स you must not forget to like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel right now.